to his academic career, he worked in intense rural marketing and connected the grassroots of the Indian economy with wireless and internet-enabled applications. He's been a consultant in banking, mobile marketing, and product innovation. He did his doctoral work at the University of Rhode Island, and his MBA is from the International Management Institute in New Delhi. His research is focused on diffusion and marketing of internet and mobile commerce. And as Terry mentioned, he was the recipient of a Research and Creative Activity Award last May, of which the deadline is coming up for the new submissions on the 29th of this month, so make sure that you're in on time before 5. He also received recently an international travel grant through this office and presented a paper along with some colleagues at the 2010 Global Marketing Conference in Tokyo, where they received the award for the best multimedia presentation, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So I give you Dr. Banerjee.
Well, thank you, Sue, and I'd like to thank the research office for arranging this for us. Before I jump right into the presentation, I'll say that though I was initially asked to present a specific paper, I thought that it would be more interesting for me to present an overview of the area in which I do research, since it's really a very niche and a growing area that not everyone is familiar with. I'll just go through a little bit of the outline, how I want to cover this. First, I'll give you guys an introduction about what mobile commerce is, how widespread is it, what are the kinds of applications available, what's the kind of advertising spend we work on, what is the viewership like, and what's the broad impact of this subject in the field of marketing, and how is it transforming research questions in this area. Following that, I'll talk briefly about 3 papers I have in the area of mobile ad effectiveness, and some of its research on consumer impact, and some of my ongoing research on social change. So when we talk about mobile commerce, it's really a transaction that can involve the transfer of ownership or rights of goods and services, and it can be completed by using mobile access to any computer-mediated network. So in essence, practically anything and everything you do through mobile devices that connect to an online environment can somehow lead to, if not constitute, mobile commerce. And the type of applications that there are in a wide variety, and I have focused my research into one specific area. There are financial applications, advertising, inventory management, auctions, entertainment, office, distance education, and I have specifically focused my research on the advertising area. So when we talk about mobile advertising, we preliminarily talk about these 4 types. There are SMS ads, simple text ads, search ads, web display ads, and application display ads. The search and web display ads are essentially through internet connection. However, SMS ads don't require internet connection, which is why they're far more in number and much more widespread. But one of the questions that comes up is, why do marketers want to use mobiles as a platform? I mean, firstly, because they are a large base to reach people. Anybody has any idea about global penetration of mobile phones worldwide? What's the approximate world population? It's around 7 billion, right? Anybody know how far internet has diffused? It's actually close to 25%, it's around 2 billion. But mobile phones, as of July, were 5 billion. Wow. We've covered 70%, more than 70% of the world population. This is one innovation which is touching not just the more affluent and the privileged, but also the underprivileged. Right. And it's growing more in the underprivileged areas, which is something that makes it very appealing to just about any marketer. And if we look at the ad spend forecasts, instead of looking at the numbers, because these are really forecasts, if we look at the proportion of the breakups, we see that from 2007 to 2012, this is US's ad spend and this is the world ad spend. Mobile search advertising was one of the smaller components, mobile search and mobile display. The dominant portion was mobile message advertising, which was SMS. But that proportion is gradually coming down, though the overall volume has almost doubled between 2007 to 2012. Not doubled, sorry, it's much more than that. the predictions is that the world is going to spend close to $19 billion on mobile marketing alone by the year 2012. And whenever there's ad spend, there has to be a way to measure the effectiveness of these advertisements. And the question becomes, investors ask how much tangible and intangible ROI can be generated. To what extent does it directly trigger purchases? And to what extent does it drive memory and create future purchases? And in this area, one impression we can get about which countries are really getting these ad impressions, who are viewing these ads. This is from BuzzCity's Mobile Ad Index, which is one of the major ad network operators. The first figure is Q4 of 2008, and the second is Q3 of 2010, close to a 2-year gap. You notice that the first year started with their major client being Indonesia, which is 57% of the ad impressions, and this total number of impressions came to around 6 billion. Whereas this, within this 2-year period, became almost 11.5 billion. All right, so it was almost doubled over this period of 2 years. And as you see, look at the countries. USA and UK are the only 2 Western countries which feature among these major top 10 impressions. The rest are Asian and African countries. So what's the broad impact? I mean, this is changing the way marketers can reach people, the way in which people consume by mixing the real and the virtual world, and I'll talk more about that, and certain social trends. Essentially, if you think about the desktop computer and the TV, which were our original source of interactive advertising, both were situated in indoor environments. We hardly ever thought of carrying a TV around with us until they became more portable. And over the years, it's the wireless the wireless laptop and the mobile phone, which have actually transformed our ability to take these advertisements into outdoor environments in a dynamic way. So earlier, when marketers used to focus on understanding ad response behavior, how people respond to ads, they used to primarily focus on advertisement content. So I'm watching a television ad, how the theme of the advertisement is, all those factors used to be one of their parts of predicting how my behavior would be. The other part of predicting would be their understanding of who's the target audience or the user. However, because these interactive environments moved into outdoor media, now there is a different variable of device, what kind of device are you viewing these advertisements through. The other is physical situation. And to elaborate on that more, take a look at this. There are static and dynamic environments, and there are indoor and outdoor environments. So your work internet or home TV are static environments and indoor with interactive media. Dynamic could be inside a car, but it's not really as interactive. Outdoor media could be a billboard, but that's again not interactive. But the mobile is both interactive and dynamic. So my first 3 papers address these 3 simple questions. How do you react if an ad or promotion is location-based? What factors influence your actual redemption of coupons? Because this, for example, is an example of a mobile coupon. Thank you for completing your details here. There's a 250 GC that you can use at any flapjacks with your purchase of 500. Okay? And you can show this message coupon and redeem this coupon when you make a purchase. The third is what determines the extent to which you will remember this messaged information even if you don't make a purchase. Okay. So for the first paper, we measured IVs like types of location, whether they were private or public locations, what kind of task-related situation the person was, whether it was in work or leisure, what kind of promos were we giving, was it based on location or random, independent of location. And the dependent variable was their willingness to purchase or redeem the coupon. So this was more of a perceptual study. And the data collection was done with 351 subjects in an experimental setting. And we set up scenarios, which I'll give you examples of. The location independent and location based were monitored this way. You are at home watching TV when your cell phone lights up with a message. When you open it, you find a free advertisement informing you about a running promotion for music albums by one of your favorite music groups at a known store. Okay. The location-based ad had one difference, at a known store near you, less than 0.1 miles away, and given that your phone was traced by location sensors, please respond accordingly. Okay? That was the only difference in the two ads. And these ads were provided in different types of conditions. Private and public conditions, as well as work and leisure conditions. So when you're at office, when you're working in a student group in a library, when you're at home with a friend, when you're shopping at a mall, and when you're waiting at a bus station. And though this was a large data set and a lot of analysis went through, I'll just share the basic findings, which was that, interestingly, what kind of a situation the person was engaged in, whether he was working or at leisure, didn't really make a difference to people's response to the ad. What did make a difference was what kind of a location they were in. So people who were in private locations, when they received the message, even if they were at leisure watching TV, they gave fewer positive responses than if they were in a public location. So in a public location, they are more in a mall setting, or they could even be in a library. But as long as it's public, they were more responsive towards the location-based message. And one way of thinking about this is, it's not about how far you are from the store. It's your sense of territoriality, it's your sense of control over whether you can be reached or cannot be reached by an outside entity. But the location-independent service, the random message, didn't really create any differences, whether it was public, private, or between different situations. The second paper looked at what factors influence the redemption of these coupons. And for this, I partnered with a firm in Indiana called Tetherball, who had a client that was Dairy Queen. They used to enroll they used to enroll a large customer base and have them know that they would message them 4 to 6 times a month with different kinds of promos. And these people were all right with it. They opted into these programs. So what we measured here is what kind of product categories the messages were going out to, how the coupons were designed. Were they designed with monetary rewards or non-monetary rewards? If you take a look at the 50% off on buying 2 blizzards, it's actually the same as a buy one get one free of a blizzard, but they're just framed differently. And we wanted to know if this framing made a difference. And we also played with the values or percentages of promotion that was given out, and the message timing. What time did we send out the message? And there was a reason for choosing these variables. There's something called a benefit congruency framework, which says that when we buy products which are more utilitarian or have functional relationships with us, we look for smart deals and we look for monetary rewards. But when we look for products which satisfy our desires or our cravings or are hedonic by nature, then we look for freebies or free gifts. And this was tested for Dairy Queen's products, where we took the meals to be more utility related and the desserts to be craving related. And for the meals, the findings were exactly according to benefit congruency framework. So as we increase the value of the coupon, okay, from 10%, from less than 50% to more than 50%, if it was a total discount like 50% off or 60% off, that produced much higher redemption rates than if it was presented in a non-monetary fashion, which was the prediction of the benefit congruency framework. So it was not a surprise.
And can I ask you a question?
Yes.
And remind me, the non-monetary
The non-monetary would
was
be
buy
like
one,
a free.
get one free?
Yeah,
Okay. And the other was a coupon for a discount?
right.
Okay.
A tangible number.
Right, like $1 off,
Right.
sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So, but when we
Is it
look
okay
at
to
the...
ask
Yes,
questions?
it certainly is. Feel free,
You're
please.
probably thinking, why do I want to know this? I have a reason for why.
And when you look at the desserts, interestingly, the benefit congruency framework didn't work. What did work was the timing of the messages. And I have a possible explanation for that, but it's not tested, so I can't be sure about it. But one of the possible reasons is desserts and purchases of desserts is very sensitive to our moods. And moods can depend on the time of the day. because there are things called circadian rhythms which fluctuate throughout the day, and it's possible that the message timing captures the best variance in people's purchasing deserts because it's based on whether it's timed right or not timed right. So noon and before text messaged people ended up purchasing or redeeming many more coupons than the people who were messaged during the afternoons.
Which is sort of counterintuitive in
Yeah.
a weird way, you know.
Yes, in the next study I found actually about to what extent people remembered information, it seemed to be the reverse. But here there are other factors as well which come in, which may not have been controlled for. So the third paper was on memory, and we wanted to know, what the way this came about is we looked at the dates on which messages were sent out and the dates on which people redeemed, and we realized that people actually keep these stored in the phone memory for a long, long time. So we realized that maybe these coupons have an utility beyond the immediate redemption. So we decided to see if we could provide them with questions and whether they could respond with correct information about what the promotion was 7 days later, after the time for redemption is passed. So we looked at 3 variables: target, gender, men and women, situation, work versus leisure, and we framed 2 types of ad claims. One type of ad claim was evaluative or descriptive. So we said a big, sizzling, hot flame burger. On the other one, we framed it more objectively or factually. We said a quarter pound flame burger with 3,500 scovilles of hot jalapeno. And 3,500 scovilles really means that's the measuring unit for how hot it is, not temperature. So it's not Celsius, it's scovilles. So we framed the same message in 2 different ways and sent it out. And the reason again for this experiment was something we call selectivity hypothesis. It says that men eliminate and women integrate information. So men respond better, they process information which is more holistic. So they screen out the borders and remember a holistic information, whereas women go into detailed analysis or detailed processing. So they remember detailed information better. And this has been found in Myers-Levi studies, and it's been replicated a wide variety of times. So now the exception to this particular case is if there is a situation where there's an incongruency, then people sit up and take notice. Then men and women both can engage in analytic processing or detailed information. So we decided to test this hypothesis on 2 groups of people. One was a group of people who were married, who were slightly middle-aged. They were working people with families. And the second was a single young college-going population. And for the first sample, we find that the exact hypothesis of selectivity hypothesis, each one of them fall into place. So it comes out exactly the way we expected. When we send people messages when they are at leisure, men remember the descriptive message better, and women remember the factual messages better. But once they are at work, so people are not expecting to receive a text message about shopping, then both of them end up remembering the factual messages because they both engage into detailed or analytic processing. So this was the middle-aged group. However, if we look at the single young college students, something fell apart there. The men remembered factual messages better during leisure situations, and there was a reason. It is often said that the younger you go age-wise, people engage more into analytic processing. And the older or the more mature they become, they engage in holistic processing because they know what patterns to look out for. Okay. So in a younger sample, we did expect more factual information to be stored. And it happened in the case of men but not of women. And in the work situation, it happened in the case of women but not men. And we still don't have an explanation. There needs to be further studies. One of the possible reasons could be is that students don't allocate work and leisure time the same way as working people do. Okay. That could be a cause. So essentially the variables and relationships we explored were the impact of product category, situation or timing, the target, gender, age and marital status of the population, the type of message appeal, promotion format, offer value, location-based strategy, and type of location on people's redemption, their memory of this information, and their perceptions. This is one of the tracks that I work on in my research. Now, another track that started up quite early, which brought me into this field completely, is about the impact of e-commerce on consumers. How is this mobile media environment affecting the personality of the consumer? And the genesis of this idea was in National Highway 8, Rajasthan in India, 2001. I was working with a vehicle tracking solution providing company which had GPS as a competitor. And GPS was trying to install their machines on trucks so that they could track people's consignments. And there was a trend where truck drivers started reporting problems with GPS units. Later we realized that there were no problems. They were simply plugging off the GPS because they didn't want to transmit wireless information independent of their control over how they wanted to transmit it. And at first I thought this was, India, and it could have been an outlier. But then I realized over a period of time that there were similar incidents happening all over the world. The first time I experienced it was in Rajasthan in 2001. In 2005, New York City, 2006, Philadelphia, 2009, Bermuda, the taxi drivers went on strike because they did not want GPS installed into their cabs. And the reason I put Mumbai there is they're supposed to install GPS in the public transportation system there in 2010, and we still don't know how it's going to work out. But we realized that on one hand, there was this group of people who believed that mobile devices are giving us access to the online marketplace. It can have so many useful implications, etc., etc. On the other hand, there's this growing discomfort of being oblivious to what your current context or environment is, and a certain amount of discomfort people have of accessing these online marketplaces ubiquitously. So I went on to look at other examples like distracted driving, and we realized that 28% accidents nowadays occur when people are talking on cell phones, which is a pretty significant number. And it even shows that using a cell phone while driving, whether it's handheld or hands-free, delays a driver's reaction time as much as having blood alcohol concentration at the limit of 0.08%. And this was shown by a University of Rhode Island study much before this, that it doesn't really matter whether you're holding the device with your hand. What happens is the moment you start talking, you develop tunnel vision. So you fixate on the immediate car right in front of you, and you can't see what else is happening on the sides. So this distraction and this obsession with mobile environments, both the extremes, I decided to develop a scale on which I could place every individual who was an internet shopper. On one end would be people who would shop online only from fixed situations or environments like home or office. On the other hand would be a young kid who would be willing to place an order maybe while he's sitting in church. And you're laughing, and you'll be surprised to what I'm going to find. So we did 8 focus groups, 5 surveys. We had more than 1,200 users of laptops and mobiles who participated. And we came up with the scale, and 2 important things with the scale we found was, one, it predicted to what extent people shopped by connecting online to different websites. The other thing it predicted was how people would respond to mobile advertisements, because they felt the same relationship with the marketplace. And I wanted to visualize what do these people look like, the ones who are doing this. So just to make sure that I wasn't imagining things, I broke up the sample into a men's sample and a women's sample and looked at patterns. What I did was I asked them, to what extent are you willing to go out and search for products, information, or complete shopping transactions, make payments through the mobile internet at these different locations. And I gave them a list of these 12, 13 locations. Home, work, library, friend's house, community center, internet cafe, university, place of worship, hotel, airport, in transit, park. One of the groups that emerged, the red group, were the ones who were comfortable only at home and nowhere else. The second group, green, was comfortable at home and somewhat at work, but at neither of the other ones really. The third group was a little bit comfortable in the first two and somewhat in the remainder. The fourth group didn't care where they existed. And their usage of the mobile internet did not change based on whether it was home, work, library, whatever it was. So I zeroed in on these profiles and found exactly the same clusters coming out in the women's sample. So it was consistent, I wasn't imagining things. And then I zoomed in to see what demographic profiles these created. And instead of going through the numbers, we found that men who are more ubiquitous or more oblivious of their immediate environment are younger, more educated, which are understandable, expected. That doesn't add anything new to the diffusion of innovations research, but they are more racially diverse. And this comes as a surprise because racial diversity is not necessarily highly correlated with income. There's a zero correlation with income in some standards. Second is women are younger, they are lower income, their marital status is relatively single, and they're racially diverse. So if you actually look at the clusters, you will find that not only is it that the more ubiquitous men are more racially diverse, you'll also find that the more rooted men or women are less racially diverse. So it provides both ends to the spectrum. So it also means that people who form these segments will be definitely multicultural, multiracial. And then finally, I go on to the last area, which is, how can these be used for change? And I look at the area of mobile learning, which I consider to be one of the most potentially impactful areas in the coming future. And I made this assessment based on some broad pictures, which I will share with you. This is a social trend in terms of the world population trend. It's a forecast for 2030. If you look at these colors essentially mean percentage of the population above the age of 65. The darker the color, more is the population above the age of 65. So if you look at North America, South America, parts of Asia, Australia, they're relatively higher in terms of average age. Two of the largest population sources, Africa and India, are relatively lighter in comparison. They are supposed to have younger populations. And if we compare a few other pieces of information, it looks quite interesting. Not only do they have higher younger population, they have a high divide geographically in terms of connectivity and infrastructure. They have a high social divide, social class divide, high educational divide. They have gross educational ratios below 15%. And another thing they have in common is they are one of the highest drivers of mobile phone penetration. So it is these areas which require education or infrastructure the most that are really driving mobile usage or adoption of this device.
What does the GER less than
It's
15% mean?
Gross educational ratios are calculated as if there are 100 students in a certain age group that should be going to school, how many of them end up going to school.
Oh, wow.
And here the developed countries have close to, US or European countries have 80 to 83% average. And if you see sub-Saharan Africa probably has 11 to 14%, similarly with India, which has a large population in the rural interiors. And Asia, I think, has an average of 22 to 23%. So given the commuting profile of students at UM Flint, we know we have a large group of people who are working, studying, managing a family, who have multitasking as a majority. What are the prospects of mobile learning at University of Michigan Flint? And what demographic profiles need M-learning the most? And what formats do they need this mobile learning in? So we are actually beginning focus groups next week and the week after, and any of you who's interested to participate may sign up. There's a sheet outside on the table. So I'd like to make sure I acknowledge the Office of Research, thank them for giving me the opportunity to present. Tetherball, Indiana, and Dairy Queen, who have partnered with my research, My co-researchers, Dr. Thalakia, Scott Yancey, and Daniel McDowell. And followed by that, I have references and a thank you slide. Questions? Yes.
Your first paper, what population were you looking at there? Was it an American population?
Yes, all the papers, all the studies I have done so far have been strictly US populations.
Okay.
Even if there has been cultural diversity, it has been within the US. So, I mean, otherwise it would bring in a lot of heterogeneity or error in the survey. So, yes.
Your final paper, you were looking at, young people who purchase anywhere, and you were looking at the men and the women. And the women were typically not very educated, correct? And the
Not
men,
very high income also, low income.
okay, whereas the men were
More
educated?
educated, yes.
Why do you think that is?
In fact, not just that, let me go a little further. We notice that to men, whether they're married or not, doesn't really make a difference as to how oblivious they are. But women, when they're single, they're far more oblivious, and when they are married, they're far less oblivious. And this has a lot of roots in the gender literature, and if you read some literature on field dependence, field independence, that might have some potential explanations. But the mediating processes is something I still haven't uncovered. These simply, pattern their behavior, really. And I still don't have an explanation as to why exactly it's happening. But specifically education and income. Traditionally we've always expected more educated and higher income people to be innovators. Why is it going towards the reverse direction for women and not for men? That's an interesting question, I guess. And it does triangulate with other research which has also found that racial diversity is one of the driving factors behind mobile. Yes, you have a question?
Well, I was just thinking, when you travel to a country where people don't have lots of resources, you can see how the mobile phone is just, it's a godsend to them.
Right.
And so you can see that they would use that. They don't have a computer at home or internet or whatever.
Right.
So you can kind of see that low income
Right,
would
that is one of the
be
primary
a
reasons.
factor.
Yes, and I'm not saying that you have to travel to a different country for that.
Right.
Even within the US.
But that might be.
And I was gonna say the same thing, and that is, even in this country, you have a lot of people, for example, who don't have
Right.
a
Right.
computer, they don't have an internet connection at home, and they typically will go to the public library if
Yeah.
they can find one, and sometimes public libraries have huge, lineups, really.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly.
One of them being, of course, this is for a different reason, the Traverse City Public Library. Good luck with trying to get on a computer there. In the summer, all these vacationers are up there, they
I know.
don't typically have access, and the place is just jammed with people trying to,
And
and
a lot
that's
of
not
people,
necessarily a
yeah,
low-income
they
population.
cannot afford laptops. It's
Right.
easier for them to take a mobile data plan.
Right.
There's an article in Newsweek this week that references someone's research on prepaid cell phone plans and their growth of them across the world, and they reference some of the same data that you found in terms of the distribution of who's going for prepaid because either they don't have a credit history or they don't want
Exactly.
to deal
In
with
fact,
that.
in a country like India, some of the companies are working on making these SIM cards, phone SIM cards, equivalent to their social security number because they don't have a social security number. That SIM card stores all the information about their payments and that becomes their credit history.
Ooh, wow, that's scary. Don't lose your cell phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Did I cut you off? Were you going to say something?
No, that's the only place.
Anything else? All right.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Banerjee. Well, thank you so much for coming, and please have some more food. You're welcome to stay, go interact with our speaker. Speak with some of our distinguished guests.
Eat some more.